Okay, welcome to the first episode of Charlie Talks Tottenham. Today we'll be doing an end of season review on this disastrous campaign. We're joined by my dad. Dad, how are you?
Yeah, relieved, Charlie. So, yeah, glad the season's over. And, yeah, get to have a nice summer now.
Dad, let's begin. Start the season on the 6th of June. Ange got sacked. Ange obviously won the Europa League. I feel he should never have been sacked, and had we kept him, this season would never have gone the way it did. Thomas Frank comes in. Dad, what did you think about this decision?
So, I do believe if he was in charge of the Super Cup game against Paris Saint-Germain, I do believe we would have won that game. But I also believe 3 or 4 months down the line, he would have probably been ended up sacked through to poor run of form, continuing from last season in the league. Getting Frank wasn't really my first choice. I think from memory, I wanted Areola. I thought, going from one attacking manager to another. However, we got Frank, and I'll be honest with you, at the time I thought, hopefully he'll make us a bit more stable and a bit more consistent rather than this sort of basketball football. But he didn't, unfortunately. So overall, now we've had time to sort of reflect and, we've seen all the games. It wasn't the best decision to sign Frank. But ultimately, I do think Postecoglou would have gone this season if he hadn't have been let go this time last year.
Ange told us at the parade that season 3 is better than season 2. So do I think, had we kept Ange, this season would have been a disaster? No, I don't. I think it could have gone quite well. I think you're absolutely right. We would have definitely won the Super Cup. Do you think PSG only had a couple of days training for that game and they still beat us? I find that quite embarrassing. Yes, we did it fairly well in that game, but we should have won that game, really. And yeah, look, Thomas Frank was definitely the wrong appointment. I mean, what did they say? There was a list of 30 managers and he came out on top. I don't know who were these other 30 managers, because they must have had the ex-Wickham manager Mike Dodds, who was terrible for Wickham, on that list. Because it's just, I mean, how Thomas Frank comes on top of 30 managers, I don't understand, because he was terrible. He was disastrous. He's one of the worst managers we ever had. I think the only manager I've ever seen that's worse than Thomas Frank is Igor Tudor. But start of the Thomas Frank era, we cannot say it was too bad. Obviously, that Super Cup game against PSG. Then we faced Burnley on the first day of the season. We won 3-0. Then we went away to the Etihad, a tough game against Manchester City, and picked up a 2-0 win there. Things were looking good, weren't they, Dad?
Yeah, like I say, those first 3 games, I think we were a bit unlucky against Paris, but like you say, I think they'd only been together 2 or 3 days before that game. The Burnley game, they got a result. It was, our first win of the season. It was one of only 3 games that we've won at home this season. And the Man City game, they were fantastic, to be honest with you. That was probably, I would say, Frank's best game as Tottenham manager. They did everything right, and that was a great day.
Yeah, no, completely. We did really, really well against Manchester City. Burnley, I expect us to be beating Burnley, but that Man City game, it was superb. We did really, really well. Not only to keep a clean sheet, but to score those 2 goals. Yeah, a fantastic performance. And I'll be honest, after those first 3 games, I really thought, wow, Thomas Frank is the man. Then we faced Bournemouth. Dad, we were in Turkey for this Bournemouth game. I actually remember we fell asleep. It was that bad. It was that bad. And we can both agree that this was where we began to see, hang on a minute, something's up. Am I right?
Yeah, no, I remember watching that game in Turkey, and we could have easily lost that game, 6-0. I mean, I thought we had a really terrible first half. I was thinking we can't play like that in the second half, and we actually played worse in the second half. I remember thinking that Xavi was in the ground in the stand. He just signed, and he must have been thinking, what have I done signing for this lot for? It was, like I say, it was relentless. How they only won that game 1-0 is beyond me. And yeah, the cracks started to show there for me. It was like, this isn't right. We cannot play like this at home and be dominated at home. And we were. And like I say, the 1-0 scoreline was quite flattering for Tottenham that day.
Dad, after that game though, we did manage in the next game to pick up 3 points against West Ham. Now, I don't think at that point we were thinking that we were going to be in a relegation battle with West Ham. I think everyone knew West Ham were going to be in a relegation battle because of how poor they started the season with Graham Potter. Obviously, Nuno came in, and I mean, obviously today we've got the news that he will be staying at the club in the Championship. But even after Nuno came in for them, it didn't go too well. But that 3-0 win, it did look like a good performance again. Another clean sheet, put 3 goals past their goalkeeper. You started to think again, Thomas Frankville, is it? Even after that poor Bournemouth game, it still looked on the up, didn't it?
So I remember when we watched the Tottenham West Ham away, I remember thinking that West Ham would go down. That I thought they were a terrible, terrible team. From memory, I think they had a player sent off as well quite early on in the second half. And yeah, then we obviously scored, I think, a couple more goals from memory. But yeah, I remember thinking that is one of the worst West Ham teams I'd seen at this point under Potter, who, like I say, just seems, out of his depth at West Ham. It's similar to what happened to Frank in the end. The players didn't have his back. He seemed to have lost the players. And yeah, at that point, I think that was the first time I thought West Ham could be going down. And yeah, it did paper over the cracks for Tottenham after the bad result against Bournemouth. But like I say, 10 men against quite a shocking team really isn't, it's great because there are rivals. But now, like I say, we've had time to look back at the season. Was that really a great result? Yeah, it kept us up. But West Ham were in shocking form, and that is part of the reason why they've eventually gone down and we've stayed up, because that Potter team just did not function.
Yeah, no, I mean, looking back at that game, if we didn't win that game, even if we drew, we would have gone down. We would have gone down. That was, looking back, it's probably the most important game of the season. But Dad, after that, our Champions League campaign got underway, and you can't say we did too bad in the Champions League. I think we did fairly well in the Champions League. Obviously getting through round of 16, and well, that 5-2 against Atletico Madrid was not great, but we'll come on to that later. Getting off to a winning start against Villarreal, it was really looking good.
I watched that game in Malta. I was away that week. I went to Malta. And from memory, I mean, you might remember it better than I do. That wasn't a great game, was it? It was, 1-0? And I wouldn't say we were convincing.
It was an own goal. It was an own goal. And I think we didn't create many chances in that game, did we? No, we didn't. It was a pretty boring game, pretty standard Frank win.
I think that's when we started to see Frank's way of playing of
anti-football.
Maybe not anti-football, but not a lot of chances. As in not a lot of chances created, and not a lot of goals in the team.
Dad, after that game, it wasn't up until the Villa game where we lost our next game. And for me, that really was the very beginning of the end. Obviously, that Chelsea game and that Arsenal game, they were both also really poor. But this is where consistency in losing began to start. But up until that point, though, we picked up a couple of draws. We beat Leeds.
That was a good win. That was
we did very well in that game.
Against Leeds.
That was that Leeds game. Let's talk about that Leeds game. That was the end of the great Thomas Frank era, wasn't it?
So people forget that game, I believe we won away at Leeds, was the first game Leeds had lost at home for well over a year. And actually, we played really well. I think Tell score in that game. I think Tell made quite a big impact in that game.
Tell and Kudus scored, yeah.
Yeah, and we played well from memory. We fought hard, and they looked quite together in that game. Like, listening to the manager and being behind the manager. I remember thinking away from home, that was a great result.
Now the Villa game. That Leeds game was the last high for Thomas Frank. And this is where we began to sink. Dad, this really was the beginning of the end. We scored in the first 5 minutes. Rodrigo Bentancur scored. Yeah. And after that, it was really, we didn't attack the other team. I remember under Thomas Frank, everyone was saying the same thing. Stop playing Polino and Bentancur together. Stop playing Polino and Bentancur together. And Thomas Frank kept playing them two in the midfield together. And I fully agreed with that. Them two should not have been playing next to each other. Now that De Zerbi's come in, though, he has proven that them two can play together, that Bentancur can pass the ball forward. But Frank was just so negative. And that game, it really showed it. To score in the 4th minute and then not really attack for the rest of the game, Dad, that was the start, wasn't it?
So, like you say, from memory, we scored early. And I think we scored a second goal quite quickly after that was ruled out for, was it offside? And it was literally like, I don't know, a toe or a finger offside. I can't remember exactly. And then after that, we just sat deep. We let them have the ball. Like I say, you've seen Polino and Bentancur in recent weeks with De Zerbi, where they're pressing teams. They're not letting them, come straight in the box, 20 yards in front of space. And that was the sort of first game where you just saw this wall that Frank tried to create that, was quite breakable.
Yeah, and after that, it was the Monaco game. Now, in that game, spoke about Wolves. Vicario was absolutely brilliant, but, that was so boring. A 0-0 draw. I hated that game. That's when we really, really began to see the negativity of Frank. I remember in that game, you fell asleep, Dad, and the only entertainment I had was waking you up. It was that bad. Dad, did this really just show how negative Frank was and how this was not going to end well?
Like you said, I don't really remember anything about that game.
You were asleep most of it.
Because obviously I fell asleep on the couch because it just didn't have
any life
in it from what I remember. But I do remember you saying Vicario saved us. And like I say, this is when this, I wouldn't say rot, but you noticed that we weren't passing the ball forward enough. We weren't, creating enough chances, and ultimately it seemed incapable of scoring goals because of all of this.
Yeah, I actually fell asleep for the last 10 minutes of that game because that was so terrible. I really do remember that game. That was terrible. Vicario got a 9.4 match rating. It was incredible. Yeah, that was the beginning of the anti-football. The Thomas Frank did not enjoy it. I went into that game really, really confident, and honestly, a waste of 90 minutes. And then, Dad, we've spoke about how now the Villa game, the Monaco game, the ship had began to sink, but maybe it popped up for a second with that Everton game. Although I do say that Van der Ven scored 2 goals, both from set pieces. I think that game's a really. To talk about that game, who was the set pieces, and I think if it weren't for set pieces this year, we definitely would have gone down. I think us and Arsenal equalled the same amount of set piece goals, and Arsenal are known as set piece FC. So, Dad, what were your thoughts on that game? Let's say the last high of the Thomas Frank era. The ship bocked up, and then it went straight back down after that.
So the Everton game, Tottenham held their ground from memory. It wasn't an entertaining game, although, it finished 3-0 to us. Like you say, we were very effective from corners. You could see that, they'd put in a lot of time practicing, because I don't think the season before we'd scored from a corner. So, they obviously done well on the training pitch to score those goals. It wasn't from like creative football. It was all from like set plays, which, like I say, is the majority of our goals this season. But I do remember at 1-0, maybe, Everton had a goal disallowed because, I don't know, there was a player in front of the goalie where the referee deemed that he was distracting the goalkeeper.
That Brian scored.
Yeah, that game could have gone a lot different without that decision.
Yeah,
like
completely.
I say, we stuck to it. We did a job, but it wasn't free flowing football that we all want to see, was it?
Before we talk about what happened after that, where we lost 2-0 in the EFL Cup to Newcastle, then there was the Chelsea game and the Arsenal game, and it was really, really bad. I want to come back a little bit before the Leeds game and we drew to Wolves. Was that another point where the cracks began to show?
Oh, massively. At that point, we were obviously there, and you're playing against a team that I don't think had got a point in the Premier League.
No, they hadn't. We gave them.
And what was that? 6-7
Wolves,
games in, Charlie?
Pardon?
Was that 6 or 7 games into the season? I can't remember.
Yeah, quite early in the season. We'd actually left by the time Palhinha scored. It was just such a terrible game. We didn't want to watch it. But I think this season, Tottenham and Wolves, we've had a good friendship. We gave them their first point of the season, and they gave us our first win. So thank you, Wolves, and we also accept your thank you. But all jokes aside, you're absolutely right. It was terrible. But Palhinha, he's been great all season, and that was another crucial goal he scored.
For me, like I say, I voted, on the website and all that, and he was our player of the season for me. I can't understand why Frank and Tudor could not find a place for him in that team. I just don't understand it. I was delighted when we signed him. I thought he was a player that we needed. Every time he played, he gave 100%. He was a leader. And like you say, he scored some crucial goals because he never gave up.
And top performances.
Ultimately, that's kept us in the league, I think.
He is brilliant. He is 100% my player of the season as well, Dad.
Yeah.
But we are going a bit off topic. Let's go back to where we were with the Newcastle game. Another really, really poor game from what I can remember. I remember watching that game on my phone. Then the Chelsea game and the Arsenal game. Now let's talk about them games. The Chelsea game, we had an XG of 0.05, and in the Arsenal game, an XG of 0.07. We actually scored in the Arsenal game, but it was Richarlison from the halfway line. So it was an amazing strike. It wasn't a great Thomas Frank move. No, it was, we won the ball back. Richarlison chipped Raya. Dad, them 2 games, that's when Frank should have gone, is it? That's when they should have said, we are going absolutely nowhere under you. If you want to make anything out of this season, you need to go.
So, the first one, the Chelsea game, I remember my friend, who is a massive, massive Chelsea fan, said to me that when Frank's Brentford team had played Chelsea, he wondered what sort of tactics he was actually using. And he basically came down to boring the other team to death, hoping they make a mistake and they score. And in the game we played with Frank at Tottenham against Chelsea, we bored our own fans to death. We didn't compete. Like you say, I don't remember us even having a shot on goal or a chance, and we lost at home. That was a time where I think we should have been looking at Frank thinking, is he the man for the job? Is this going to get better? And we'll carry on to the next game, to see what we say.
Yeah, no, and after that, obviously, after the Arsenal game, there was the PSG defeat, and it really, really went downhill. We obviously beat Brentford at home, December, really, really poor. Lost 3-0 to Nottingham Forest, 2-1 to Liverpool, but we did manage to beat Crystal Palace at the end of December, and I want to talk about that game because,
Before we talk about that, Charles, let's go back to that Arsenal game.
yeah.
Yeah, to be honest with you, after that game, I'm not anti-Frank. I don't hate him. I think he's a really nice guy. But that is when he should have been shown the door. Because after the Chelsea and then the Arsenal game, to show that level of commitment that wasn't there, and desire to play, and passion in a London derby, should have really been at the end of his story. It was the Chelsea game wasn't a freak result, and then we got smashed by Arsenal 4-1 by literally just letting them shoot outside the box, not closing them down, and that is when they should have pulled the plug on Frank. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. You want to go on to which game?
Before we talk about the Palace game, actually about the Forest game, because I remember that game, such a crucial game. At this point, we weren't near relegation. It was more, we could still qualify for Europe. We were still in the battle for Europe. And that game really showed us, yeah, this is dire. Do you remember that game, Dad?
Yeah, we lost 3-0, and I think it was after Ange got sacked at Forest and they just brought Dyche in and they outplayed us. But I do remember looking at their midfield that day, Forest, and I saw Gibbs White, Anderson, and is it Sanga?
Yeah. Scored a screamer.
He scored a screamer. And I remember thinking, hang on a minute, yeah, we're worse than we think here. Don't think we should have beaten Forest. They beat us well, and they had better players on the pitch than us. I remember thinking that from the game. That's when, not only was I thinking, Frank isn't the right man, but also how weak our squad was. If a team that, they were in the bottom three at this time as well, from memory, Charlie, and they outplayed us and outbattled us.
Yeah, no, that was really poor. I remember we saw Sangai scored Dad, and then we were going out to go look at bikes for me because I needed a new bike, and we planned on leaving at the end of the game. We left. We were watching a game on the TV, and we've turned it off with 10 minutes to go. That's when you know it's really, really bad. Then there was the Liverpool game. It wasn't great. Richarlison actually scored in that game. He came on, and then a minute later he scored. And Dad, we saw Richarlison come on, and we said, "Oh, let's go. This is going to get worse now that he's on."
Yeah.
But from what we saw that day, that was really poor as well, wasn't it?
So that Liverpool game, I thought we were unlucky because I remember the foul for
That's such a foul.
The Romero challenge, or was it what's his name?
Ekatike.
Ekatike. That was a foul all day. I didn't think Liverpool were much better than us. But yeah, as soon as we brought Richie on, I thought, we're 2-0 down. Were we 2-0 down at that point?
Yeah, we were 2-0 down. Richie came on, actually scored.
What are we going to do here? And yeah, we left early because I think not just because of that Liverpool game, but like the 3 games before it that you just mentioned, the Chelsea, the Arsenal, and the Nottingham Forest game, I could see, they didn't have much in them.
Yeah, and that Liverpool game was the game where I said for the first time, Thomas Frank needs to go, someone else needs to come in and steer us back up the table into a European position. But it wasn't until Newcastle that they sacked him. But then we actually won a game of football. We beat Crystal Palace. Dad, that's a Thomas Frank win, isn't it? You score from a corner and you defend, and it was just the worst game of football ever. I think, you know me, Dad. I like to turn my phone off when we're watching games on the TV. I turned my phone on in the 60th minute to scroll TikTok for the last 30 minutes, and when we won, I was like, yay, we won. But it was just absolutely terrible. It was terrible, wasn't it?
Yeah, that game was during Christmas. How we won that, like I say, that had 0-0 written all over it. And you like to say, it was a real hangover from Christmas sort of game. It was shocking. It was boring. You like to say, it was typical Frank. And the next game that I'm sure you're going to come on to was actually even worse.
Yep,
I
Brentford.
think that Brentford game is the worst game of football I've ever seen Tottenham involved in.
Another Thomas Frank 0-0 draw. I don't think we fell asleep for this one though, Dad. So there we go. Thomas Frank, well done. We didn't fall asleep watching a game of your terrible football, your awful football. I mean, when I refer to Thomas Frank, I like to refer to him as Thomas the Wank Engine. He was the worst manager we've ever had, other than Igor Tudor. But yeah, just that Brentford game, absolutely shocking. He returns to his old club. The fans were singing against him. Same old Tottenham, always boring. It was disastrous. Then there was Sunderland, scored from a set piece again, and then it just never picked up. We did win 2 games in the Champions League, but yeah, let's come on to that Man United game. The game before the Newcastle game, where after that Thomas Frank would be sacked. That United game wasn't great, but I think this game also shows a different side, something else. We say Romero press self-destruct. That we can blame the managers, but all we've talked about so far is Thomas Frank and how it started so well, and then how much of a fool he was, and that he was one of the worst managers ever. He is the worst, other than Tudor, who we're about to come on to. So. Ooh, but yeah, that United game. Let's talk about the players, because they really weren't great this season, were they, Dad?
So yeah, in the sort of Frank era, the sort of Man United game and the Newcastle that you're coming up to, they weren't playing for him. It is as simple as that. He'd lost the dressing room, and like I say, that he'd lost the fans. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't competitive. It was boring. We were playing for corners, and he was very effective from corners. But, the rest of his sort of tactics, I go back to what my friend said was, just bore the other team to death.
Yeah.
I don't really look into stats like you do, but I did notice there was no forward passing. It was all sideways and backwards. It was all set plays. And this XG, how many goals we predicted to score, there were in any game that wasn't very high.
No, yeah, and that United game was really poor. Romero did press self-destruct. That game really shows that the players are partly responsible, but you can say the players are bad, but then why we look at Frank and Tudor and how bad they were. De Zerbi comes in. There was a Sunderland game. Don't get me wrong, that was poor. But everything just changed like that. Just a sudden change. The Brighton game was really, really good. We were unlucky. Wolves, we didn't play so well, but we won. And I don't know how Tottenham works, but we stayed up by the skin of our teeth. And I was happy at the Everton game on the final day. I was celebrating us staying up. But Dad, let's come on to it. The end of Thomas Frank. The end. Newcastle. Yeah, the fans were singing for Mauricio Pochettino in this game. It was disastrous. Archie Gray managed to score a header from, guess what? A set piece. Another set piece, Thomas Frank goal. That's one of probably the good things we did when we were sacking off all these people. The set piece coach stuck through it because he was a good set piece coach. But yeah, it was disastrous. And that game really, that was the end, Dad, wasn't it? The end.
Yeah, like it's not just, it's the performance. You couldn't really get behind the performance. In a lot of these games that, we're talking about, some people will say, there was some really bad refereeing decisions. Other people will say, we had a lot of injuries, which we did. But ultimately, what we were watching was diabolical. Like you just said, when we bought, these players are better if we're trying to play football rather than trying to defend deep and just sort of wait until we concede a goal and then say to each other, I told you so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was it, the end. I know that Lang and Vinay both wanted to keep hold of Thomas Frank even after this game because they wanted a big build with him, but the Lewis family stepped in. Probably one of the good things the Lewis family had done and said, no, this man needs to go. And yeah, he's terrible, terrible. You cannot get much worse, can you? But somehow we did. Dad, we park on a road called Tudor Way when we park to get to Hillingdon. And it was the Tudor Way, the three at the back, the foolish football, I like to call it. In comes Igor Tudor. Dad, what were your thoughts on this appointment? Don't tell me what you think, like how it went by the end of it, because I mean, it was terrible. The worst manager ever. He's a 0% win rate in the Premier League after 5 games. We actually managed to win a game of football under him against Atletico Madrid, but yet we still lost. We still went crashing out of the Champions League that night. But Dad, what were your thoughts on the initial appointment of Igor Tudor? Tudor is Tudor.
So I knew that would be a disaster. You know, the only decision they have made worse than appointing Frank was actually appointing Tudor. Like I say, this isn't in hindsight. When he signed, I think I remember telling you, this is going to be a disaster. He's never played in England. He's never coached in England. You know, he's coming into a dressing room that is on its knees and sleepwalking into relegation. Yeah, whoever came out with that idea, you know, whether it was Lang or Vinay, or that they contacted Parateki for some help because they probably didn't know what to do, and he obviously had contacts with Tudor from his past job at Juventus. That is the worst advice given to a club in these sort of desperate measures. You know, and it's nothing to do with the football he played or the interviews he'd done. He just wasn't the man for the job. And thank God they pulled the plug on him, because if he was the manager on Sunday, up until Sunday, we would have been down 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, they definitely made the right choice getting rid of him. But I mean, Dad, I actually do remember you saying, I remember I got out of school in the car, you were there, you looked at me and I went, Dad, is everything all right? I was thinking something was wrong. I was thinking I got a detention or something. You looked at me, most serious face, and you said, Tottenham have appointed Igor Tudor. Initially, I was a bit like, oh no. And then, you know what? I thought, yes, Igor, you know, I think I watched TikTok. Look at this man. He's always out of his. Yeah, he did make me laugh. But yeah, I would not have been laughing if we went down, which we were going to. And Tudor actually said in his first press conference, the last question they asked him, his first press conference was, Igor, will Tottenham be in the Premier League next year? And he said 100%. If he was there, it would have been 0%. But yeah, onto the Arsenal game. It was 4-1 when we played them away with Thomas Frank, and it was 4-1 when we played them at home. Eze scored 2 against us. Remember, whoever scored 3 away. I mean, Thomas Frank, the fool, said in his press conference, "Who's Eze?" Because obviously we tried to sign him. I mean, Thomas Frank. We're done with Frank. We're on to Tudor. Let's get through this fool, this clown, and then let's come on to the hero, the saviour, De Zerbi. Let's get through Tudor. Dad, what were your thoughts on the Arsenal game? Another game we left early, but not as early as we left under Frank, because that game we might have lost, but there were some positives. We were level with them at half time. The fans didn't boo. Like, we haven't talked about the booing yet. Let's talk about the booing. The booing was not okay, was it, Dad?
No, I'm not. You know, I don't believe in going to the stadium and paying all this money to boo the players. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, some of them may have deserved it, but I just don't think it creates an atmosphere of unity to support the team and push the team along, like you've seen, you know, getting games further along in the season, like Brighton, you know, Leeds, and on Sunday against Everton. Yeah, I mean, the club brought all that on themselves, you know, by hiring managers like Frank. You know, there was quite a few Tottenham fans disgruntled about Postecoglou being sacked after winning the trophy. And then, like you say, bringing in this Tudor who, you know, I've got quite a few Italian friends that I rang or text and asked about Tudor, because they're big Juventus fans. And they they said to me, and so they know him, they watch that league, they said he is a disaster.
Yeah, and he really, really was a disaster.
And it was a toxic atmosphere. That I mean,
But the
especially
booing, they
under
didn't really
Frank.
boo under Tuesday. They booed at the Forest game and they booed at the Palace game.
Yeah, more under Frank than they were Tudor. And that is part of another reason why Frank had to go. He didn't just lose the players, like I said earlier. He lost the fans. I don't think there's any fans. Like I say, when Andrew was sacked, I'd say, I don't know how much in percentage, but there was a number of Tottenham fans that said he should be staying. And there was a number of fans that, and you're one of them. And there's a number of fans that said, no, he had to go. I think with Frank, there isn't one fan that would say we should have kept him.
We say there isn't even one fan, Dad. Let's quickly talk about that. Nunnu. Let's talk about Nunnu. Nunnu has stuck by every single manager, hasn't he, Dad? Every single manager.
The most loyal man in the world.
But
especially when it comes to Tottenham.
We heard the words coming out of his mouth. Thomas Frank has to go. We are going nowhere with him. We were actually going somewhere with him. We were going to the Championship. Am I right? He said those words. He said it in an interview. Go watch the Newcastle vlog. He said it in an interview.
Nunnu, Charlie, is a real old school Tottenham fan. He, like I say, he doesn't say anything bad about the club. He loves watching great football. And this season got to him. And Frank, I think he wanted from memory Postecoglou to stay as well.
He always stuck by.
He was loyal. Yeah, because he's a loyal guy. But Frank, like I say, he really stunk the place out. Basically, I don't think he's got me. I think most fans will say, yeah, he's a nice guy, blah blah blah. But I think looking forward to the future now, we can't buy these sort of substandard managers, that do well at small clubs. We need to buy a good attacking coach with new ideas, to entertain the fans, play good football, and demand more. Whereas Frank, I think that's his biggest problem. I don't know what he was demanding other than being completely average and utterly boring.
Yeah. I love Ange. I've got a picture of him in my room, don't I, Dad?
We bought it for your birthday, Charlie. Of course I know.
That even I turned on Ange during that dark period before we won the Europa League. But we spent the last couple of minutes yappering on about Frank and that he was just a disaster. We haven't spoke about that Arsenal game. A decision went against us. That could have gone differently, I think. Dad, let's talk about that game. What did you think of that game?
The Tottenham Arsenal game?
The 4-1.
At home. Which decision was this, sorry?
The Colomwani push. I mean, we think back to the Ekatike one.
Yeah, no, you did.
And next week, the exact same thing happened against us with Dragusin, and they gave it a go.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, like I say, I don't want to talk about. We haven't had any luck this season, and we haven't had any decisions. We haven't had any penalties. A lot of it is because we haven't made our own luck. Yeah, because we've been just diabolical. It's been a disaster. But some of those decisions that have gone against us this season. I mean, how many of them do you want me to talk about? Do you just want me to talk about the Arsenal one or the other ones? I think
Tottenham finished. So if you take away VAR from every single game, some teams would have gained points from VAR decisions. Some teams would have lost points. Tottenham finished bottom. VAR lost us 4 points this season. That's a stat that I think we talked about. Deb, what were your thoughts on the performance in the Arsenal game, the beginning of the Igor Tudor era?
I didn't expect much because we were on bad form. The players had lost confidence. We brought in a very uninspiring man there, and I didn't expect anything less. I didn't see this manager bounce with Tudor, and I don't dislike him or anything like that. I think he's a good man, but he just wasn't the man for the job. And for his first game in English football, against in the North London derby, that was crazy.
Yeah, and then it was Fulham, and then it was Palace. That Palace game, that was when we began to think we're going down. We're going down, wasn't it, Dad?
The Palace game, we've gone one up. Then
And
he
then,
sent Van off, isn't it, for a penalty,
yeah,
and within the space of like 6 minutes, we're 3-1 down before half time. It was game over. Was it a Monday night from memory? Yeah,
it was a midweek, I
it was
think.
a midweek one. Yeah, it was the worst way to spend an evening, in your life.
We speak about Nunu and how loyal of a fan he is. He actually told us that day, Dad, didn't he? That at half time, let's go home.
Yeah, and I think I said, no problem, let's go.
I was the one who said, hang on a minute, I had the
know.
belief. I said, we can come back here. We were not coming back. We left in the 70th minute. I remember I got a load of comments in the Arsenal game saying, you're not a true fan, you left early. So in the next video, I made sure to highlight, we are leaving in the 70th minute, which is diabolical.
Leaving early, is not, you're a true fan if you stay. That doesn't mean anything. We live an hour and 20 minutes away from that ground. It's a school night, for you.
And we're playing terrible.
That doesn't make you not a true fan by leaving early.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
Especially when that we've paid money to go and watch that, and the game is over by half time. There was nothing left to support in that game.
That picture of that man with the hat and the badges, that will never be forgotten, will it? That is just the definition of a Tottenham fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then, Dad, oh my word, does it get worse? Was there a lower point? Atletico Madrid, 5-2 defeat. I mean, poor Kinski. Since then, he's had a remarkable comeback. We'll come on to that shortly. Dad, what happened that night? I actually remember me and my friend were doing an FM save. My friend was watching the game on his phone. My other friend isn't a Tottenham fan. And he said, yeah, let's do the save. And I said, no, we can't do the save. I'm going to watch it downstairs. We went 3-0 down, and I said, I phoned the group and I said, boys, let's get on. I'm not watching this anymore. My other friend said, yep, I've turned it off. I'm not watching it. And then it went 4-0. Then we scored. I came back and watched it for a bit more, and then realised, we're not coming back. Went to play, and more happened. Dad, what happened that night?
So that night, I think we just had some horrendous luck, really. Those goals we conceded were bizarre and probably premeditated by Atletico. They must have watered down that pitch after they went off from training at the beginning before the start of the game. And that they knew what they were doing, Atletico Madrid. But overall in that game, other than them 3 mistakes, ultimately Kinski or one of our defenders done, Van der Ven. I thought that was the first game under Tudor's reign where we actually competed. I understand we were 3 or 4-0 down, but you take away those 3 goals, that could have easily been 2-2.
But by that time, Igor Tudor probably should have been sacked. The reason they actually kept him was because we had Liverpool the following weekend, and I believe the board were just like, we're getting nothing out of this game, no matter who's in charge. Igor, just take it, and this will be your final nail in the coffin. But Liverpool, I mean, they've also had a really, really poor season. They did not really play well at all. I can confirm, by the way, Crystal Palace have won the Conference League. But let's get back to Tottenham. Liverpool was shocking, and we got a point. Igor Tudor got a point. You can always look back and say, yeah, I went to Anfield and I got a point. That was a good performance, Dad, wasn't it?
So I obviously listen to Talk Sport a lot in the mornings, and I've obviously heard a lot of Liverpool fans talk about Arne Slot, talk about how poor Liverpool have been this season, and I would think to myself, they haven't seen anything compared to what we've seen. They'd won the league the season before. It cannot be that bad. But after watching that Tottenham-Liverpool game at Anfield, and also thinking back to the Tottenham game at the Tottenham Stadium against Liverpool, we should have won that against Anfield, and we should have got at least a draw at the Tottenham Stadium. That sort of showed me what these people were saying on TalkSport, they were actually dead right, because we were a team with no confidence, and we'd gone there and we probably should have won that game, if I'm being honest with you. And that was nothing to do with tactics or anything like that. The players just fought hard, and they were very unlucky not to get 3 points in that game. Very unlucky.
Dad, on the subject of Liverpool, I want to speak to you about something. Now, in the last season, he obviously beat us 5-1. That game secures him the Premier League title. Dad, after that game, they pretty much sacked off the season. They lost quite a few games. And after that game, they really did not play well. Now, as you always say to me about Big Ange, that he sacked off the season, fans are paying money to go watch him, and he sacked it off, and he began this losing mentality. Can you tell this to our viewers?
Yeah, don't get me wrong, like every Tottenham manager under Daniel Levy, none of them have been back to
I'd have Levy back.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. None of those managers, whether it's Ange or Conte or Pochettino or Harry Redknapp, none of them were ever really backed on buying top quality players to be able to sort of take them to take the teams they had at that time to the next level. And getting to sort of your question about Ange, he won us a trophy.
Legend, build a statue.
Not dislike him, but I just felt last season, he's come out and said this. He basically put all his eggs in one basket. He wanted us to win the Europa League, because it would obviously not just win a trophy, but automatically get us qualified for the Champions League. But, the games we gave up to beat teams like Boda Glint and, the teams that I don't think were very good, personally.
Boda did very well in the Champions League this year.
Yeah, they did. But, and Leverkusen as well. I didn't think they were that good, to be honest. Leverkusen or Frankfurt, sorry, Frankfurt.
They really reminded me of a proper Premier League relegation team, Frankfurt.
I remember the team you just mentioned now, who've just won the Conference League, Palace. I remember watching a home game against Palace last season, and Palace, we made them look like Brazil. We really did. And I think Eze scored again in that game.
Too.
And like I say, I think you can't do that in football. I understand he was picking weakened teams because he wanted them to be fully fit for the games in Europe in midweek. But yeah, no, that's not a good standard to set. You going out there. I think I've heard him say on an interview since then, on like a Gary Neville show, I'll cop that. We'll take that. This is a ridiculous thing to say. There's 60,000 people in the stadium that have paid money to come and watch us win, and if not win, perform and compete to win. And we didn't for the last, from January onwards last season under Ange.
Dad, you can tell the viewers all about this. I go on and on about Ange to you, don't I? I want to have a minute to just explain that I completely understand where you're coming from, Dad, but I totally side with Postecoglou here. I think us winning that Europa League was huge for the club, qualifying for the Champions League, that major trophy, it was key. And Ange did the right thing, and he shouldn't have gone. He absolutely shouldn't have gone. To have the audacity to sack a manager who's won you a trophy, your first trophy in 17 years, I think it's stupid. I think it's ridiculous. And he said season 3.
Very harsh. Very harsh.
He told us, I always win things in my second season, kept his promise. He said season 3 is better than season 2. He never got season 3, so, he couldn't keep his promise, nor could he break it because he didn't even get a chance. I think that was a very wrong decision. But Ange has come out and said he sort of knew he was getting sacked when people weren't even talking there about next season. But look, I love Ange. I think he's a hero, a legend, an icon. I'll never, ever forget him. That night in Bilbao, we weren't there, Dad. We were in the garden. We had a great time with Pete and Rocco. I went to the parade. Dad, you didn't. I don't know why he didn't come to that. But yeah, it was great. And I love Ange and I forever will. And at least we can say we went off on the biggest possible high with Ange.
Yeah, like I say, I don't want to,
Put him down.
put him down. That is definitely a harsh decision, right? To sack
The
him
harshest.
after he's won us a trophy, for the first time in 17 years. But I knew that was coming for him, not because of my opinion that he should or shouldn't. I've seen what Levy had done with Pochettino. I'd seen what Levy had done with Redknapp. I'd seen what Levy had done with Mourinho. I'd seen what Levy had done with a guy that did a great job for us called Martin Yole. Yeah, it was on the cards. Tottenham, like this season, cannot finish 17th in the league. That is sackable. Most teams that have finished 17th in the league, like we have again this year, have normally sacked a manager in that period before the end of the season. But in this case, they let him play for the Europa League and they sacked him afterwards. Very harsh. And like I say, we all know now that Frank wasn't the right man to replace him. But I ultimately do think that would have happened further down the road this season if he started off as our manager this season.
No, yeah. Let's come back to Igor Tudor now. We beat Atletico Madrid. That was a very good performance, wasn't it, Dad?
Yeah, I say that was a really good game. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're 3 goals up, but the players showed something about them. Xavi was really good. He was quality in that game. That was probably up until that stage his best game in a Tottenham shirt.
Yeah, I
They
think
seemed together.
Xavi really showed off in the Champions League, didn't he? That is against these European teams. We did so well
Yeah,
in the Champions League because we're an English club, and these are what our players are designed for. They're stronger, more physical, more ready. That we seem to always do better in the Champions League. English teams always seem to do better in European competitions. I mean, look, the last 2 years, the winner of the Europa League, 24-25, Tottenham, 25-26. Villa, the Conference League, 24-25 Chelsea, tonight Crystal Palace, but just shows how dominant English teams are. And we really did well in the Champions League, and Xavi really showed off and was a fantastic player. They're his sort of leagues, aren't they?
yeah, that's a place. I think he found the pace of the English game difficult, and obviously the physicality.
Just
But
so
as soon
different.
as there was a Champions League game, he just fitted right in. And in the chat. Don't get me wrong. Before he got injured, we started to see sort of the best of Xavi in a Tottenham shirt until he got injured. But throughout the games that he played in Europe, he was very dominant. Very good on the ball, and like I say, very dominant. And I look forward to him coming back because I think he's De Zerbi's type of player, and hopefully he's got a big future at Tottenham.
I think personally, that injury he got against Wolves was sort of a blessing in disguise for us because I think he would have left this summer with us not being in Europe. That's why he left RB Leipzig, because he wanted to play in the Champions League, and obviously we're not even in the Conference League next season or the Europa League. So yeah, I think that's still positive from the injury, but I don't want players getting injured. I don't like people being hurt, and I wish Xavi the speediest of recoveries. Dad, after that Atletico Madrid game, we did very, very well. Xavi was brilliant. We faced Forest. It was a big bus meet. We had to get behind them. We got behind them. We really wanted to. Us fans, we were the 12th man, but clearly we weren't enough. That was disastrous. That was the end for Igor Tudor. Dad, what happened that day? That day was shocking, disastrous. We dropped down into 17th for that day.
So in that game, like the previous game against Forest, their midfield overpowered us, and that hasn't happened this season just against in the 2 Forest games. That happened in a lot of games up until we got De Zerbi. When we got De Zerbi, he started, he settled on, because of injuries, Polinia, Bentancur and Gallagher. And, I wouldn't say the midfield was settled, but we competed. Whereas in that Forest game, we didn't compete. In the first half, I think we were okay. You know, we don't want to sort of make out we were brilliant. We stayed in the game. You know, we had a lot of the ball, but again, we didn't create chances. You know, we didn't pass the ball forward. You know, and you know, we found it not just in that game, but all season very hard to score goals from open play.
Mm.
And like you're saying, in that game, there was 2 games where I thought this is it. Forest, I was thinking we've got one more last chance of this, and the Brighton game at home. But I'll let you come on to that. But yeah, that game, you know, the whole crowd was deflated. Everyone knew something had to change. It was just unfortunate at that time. Tudor had a bereavement in his family and was sort of shown the back door, because that's not a nice way to go. But it did have to happen, and it had to happen right in that moment, because, like I say, we've done this by the skin of our teeth this season, haven't we, Charlie?
Yeah, obviously mutual consent between Igor Tudor and the club. Sadly, yes, Igor Tudor's father did pass away. Rest in peace to him. Dad, then in comes Roberto De Zerbi. We signed him on my birthday. If you remember, we were in an Italian restaurant. How ironic is that?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah. What was it called, Charlie? I've forgotten already. I remember.
Zaccono Popole. It is the highest
nice.
rated Italian restaurant in the country.
Highly recommended.
Lovely. That place is lovely. But yeah, we're going to be off topic. In comes dessert. Me, Dad, you told me at that table on my birthday, it was just me and you, had some nice pizza and pasta. There's some lovely bread. You told me, Charlie, I do believe that Roberto De Zerbi will keep us in the Premier League, and he did just that. Dad, what were your initial thoughts on this appointment?
I thought, you know, they've left it late. They've left it really late. But I knew he could get the best out of those players, because I've seen what he'd done at Brighton, and I like his character. You know, this guy's an ex-player. He's not Postecoglou or Frank. You know, he can play. His teams played entertaining football. I knew that he could create a shape with the players we had, and believe me, we were running out of numbers at that time. And you know, it wasn't that I knew. I believed he could do it.
And Dad, we come on to the Sunderland game. We lost 1-0. That was, for me, I know some people say we didn't deserve to lose that game. For me, that was poor. We definitely did not deserve to win that. And it was not the best start to the Roberto De Zerbi era. Obviously, going into this game, West Ham had won on the Friday night against Wolves. Coming into the game, we sat 18th. And after the game, it was confirmed that by the end of that game week, we would be the team placed 18th in the Premier League. It was looking dark, wasn't it, Dad?
Yeah, so the game against Sunderland, like I say, De Zerbi signed, and within a few days of him signing, they've gone from 17th to 18th. The Sunderland game, Sunderland did not deserve to win that. You know, that Bobby should have been sent off.
Absolutely.
You know, when we're talking about the decisions earlier, that's one of them. We'll come on to a couple later. You know, he should have been sent off. Sunderland didn't do enough to win that game, just as we didn't. But, you know, a draw, you know, nothing's fair in life. That game should have been a draw. And Sunderland should have 100% had 10 men, you know, for most of that second half.
Then, Dad, we come on to the Brighton game. Dad, after this game, you said on the train back, you said in an interview, I think we're down. I cannot see us coming back from this. You said after the Everton game, after that Brighton game, it was mission impossible for Roberto De Zerbi, and yet he done it. Dad, we played really, really well against Brighton, but just fell short. And when you're in a relegation battle, you need results, not performances. And we gave the performance, just didn't quite get the result we wanted.
So, if you remember, I said that we had to win that game against Brighton, not after the game. I said it before the game.
Yeah, and you said after. I think
when we went to Wembley, if we don't win, you know, I don't even think I said there's a good chance of us going down. I think I said if we don't win today, as in 3 points, we are going down.
And we did not get 3 points.
like I say, the atmosphere in that game was fantastic. You know, the fans had really got behind, you know, the new coach and the team. You know, that I think the fans realised, you know, booing's going to get us nowhere. Let's get behind them, right? We were very unlucky not to win that game. I mean, that goal Matoma scored, you know, if you do that 10 times, unstoppable. The way he connected with that ball, you can't really, like, normally in every goal, you know, there'll be a commentator or a pundit or, you know, some idiot saying, you know, he should have been close down here, that he's not marking tight enough. You can't stop that. You cannot stop that. And then, so they've scored that goal. You know, we've had an incredible performance for 90 minutes. You know, we've made one like careless mistake in, what was it, the 93rd or 94th minute?
Dan, so.
And they've scored again. But, you know, that game there, I can't remember what I said to you after the game. I only remember before. I remember feeling down, thinking there's just too much to do here. But really, that is the game that pushed us forward, pushed the players forward, you know, because sometimes, you know, winning and losing, you know, that happens. But the performance was there. And if you can believe in the performance, you can believe to win. And, you know, that's what happened after that game. They believed they could beat these teams in front of them.
Yeah. For me, though, the most important game under Roberto De Zerbi is a game where we did not play very well, but we got the result. Like I said, in relegation battles, you don't need performances, you need results. And look, I think that Brighton performance, it really pushed on. We heard De Zerbi say it in his press conference. His interview. He said he believes that's the game where everything changed. And it was, because after that, the mentality was different going into the Wolves game. We did not play too well in that game. Solanke got injured. Xavi got injured. Polinia, the hero, the saviour. I mean, without him, we'd have certainly gone down. I remember seeing that goal go, and we were watching that game. We were with Nanu. And it wasn't like I got up and cheered and went mad. Yeah, no, it wasn't that. It was more like, hang on a minute. It is the 82nd minute of the game, and we are winning. We might win a game of football. You have to remember, at this point, we hadn't seen Tottenham win in the Premier League for ages. Since that Crystal Palace game. We were talking about that Crystal Palace game in about the 30th minute of the show. We're now over an hour in. We're now over an hour into the show, and we've only been talking about Premier League draws and Premier League losses. Yeah. And we won a game of football. I remember seeing that goal go in, and I always go back to that. I mean, I have that memory now, just glued in my head, of me just standing up going, yes, yes. And I love the Titanic song, and that's just the song that it reminds you of. I imagine having that on the background, and me just standing up, yes, we might win. I remember Nanu going, yes, oh my word, and you just sitting there with your eyes wide open, pumping your fist. And we went on to win. De Zerbi running on at full time like this, doing what you were doing with your fist, Dad. It was great. It was absolutely brilliant. We won a game of football, Dad. What were your thoughts on that game? I say the game. I don't want to talk about the performance. We won a game of football. It gave us that momentum going into that Villa game. We'll come on to the Villa game shortly. That Wolves game, Dad, that win. We won a game of football. How did you feel?
Yeah, like I say, that game, I loved it because, like you just mentioned, we lost two of our best players that De Zerbi was pinning his hopes on to help us stay up. But we wanted it more, you know, and that goal by Polinia, he scored that because of the player he is, and it's all passion and desire, you know, and it saved us. It really did. And like you say, it felt great. You know, every point we were getting up until Sunday, one more point or three more points, it was just a little bit more relief of that pressure, you know, of thinking that we're going down.
That day, though, West Ham did beat Everton 2-1. So even though it was a great day, I remember that day was a very good day. We were still in the bottom three, but we had a good week. We won a game of football. We were excited for the Villa game at that Sunday 7 p.m. kickoff. However, before that game, West Ham played Brentford. Dad, I went to this game, didn't I?
Yes, you did, with our good friends. Yeah.
And Brentford done us a favour. Brentford won 3-0. So not only did that give us the chance of coming out of the bottom three, but it also gave us relief because their goal difference was now so much worse than us, so that even if we levelled on points with them at the end of the season, which we didn't, we managed to finish 2 points in front of them. We'd have stayed up, though, with that goal difference. Coming into this Villa game, we knew winning this game, we would go 3 points, not 3 points, we go 1 point clear of West Ham, up into 17th. And what did we do? We won. I keep saying relegation battles, you need results, not performances. We had them both. We had the result. We won 2-1. Villa had one shot. It was unstoppable. You cannot blame Kinski. And we played superb. Another superb performance from Polina. Gallagher, I mean, since De Zerbi came in, Gallagher was superb. I don't know what it was with like Tudor and Frank. So many players looked so terrible. When De Zerbi came in, everything changed. De Zerbi is our saviour. He is our hero. And we won again. We come out the bottom three. How did you feel after that game and performance? Because that was such a great day. Then we watched it with our friends' dads, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, like we're saying, the difference from when De Zerbi took over these players with what he was left with after all the injuries compared to the Tudor lineup or the Frank way of playing of football, it was night and day. The players were committed, they were aggressive, they competed, win, lose or draw, the other team knew they were in a game. And that Villa game, it was fantastic because I think De Zerbi even said before the game in the press conference, it won't be a miracle if we beat Aston Villa. And like I say, anyone that watched that game saw that we were the better team and deserved to win it. And like I say, with sort of a second sort of string Tottenham team, with all the injuries, I think that may have been, was that the first game we saw Tell, Ritchie and Kalamawani up front?
I don't know, but that was a terrible front three.
Yeah.
I know that.
Well, yeah, it's not, but they worked hard.
They were hard workers.
Polina. I mean, you're
that famous
about
from that game.
Polina and Gallagher played. Bentancur was superb. When he came back in the team under De Zerbi, he showed us the player he was under Conte, and he was a massive, massive help in keeping us up this season, and especially in that Villa game.
Then after the Villa game, a superb performance. It was against Leeds the next game. We drew 1-1. Arsenal had beat West Ham. The Gooners had done us a favour the day before, and we knew that winning would all but secure safety. We'd have gone 4 points clear of West Ham. West Ham would have to win both their last two games, and we'd either have to draw one and lose one or lose both of them in order for West Ham to stay up. However, against Leeds, we couldn't take that massive opportunity. It ended 1-1. Maffey's tale from hero to zero. That fantastic goal, another set-piece goal. That goal actually getting wrong. It was a brilliant goal, brilliant strike. It wasn't a jammy header. It was a brilliant strike. That great strike. And then he decides to kick Ampadu in the head. Dad, what were your thoughts on that Leeds game?
Yeah, I don't think it was a great performance like the Villa game. I thought we competed as hard as we did against Villa, but we played a different team in Leeds. I can remember this well because it was only a few weeks ago. They played very deep. They didn't give much away.
They were very compact. They played very well.
It was nothing to do with the commitment and desire of our players. It was just sort of a case of quality of breaking another team down, which you sort of touched on a minute ago with Ritchie and Kalamawani and Tell. It's not like top quality to break down solid defences like Leeds, who were as well a very much an informed team when we played them. I do think the penalty wasn't needed that we gave away. I'm not sure what Tell was doing. I don't even think he had to sort of try and header it. All he had to do was stand up because Apadu played for that. Don't get me wrong, he got kicked in the face to do it. This is when you hear like managers say that, he's gone in to hurt himself to help the team win. That's exactly what he done. But if Tell just stood up to that, he'd have got a header and it would have gone anywhere. It would have just bounced off his head. It wouldn't have been directed anywhere. And I will say that the bicycle kick before that from Richie that Tell was following on, put us in put Tell in a lot of trouble and confusion of what to do. And I do think we had a penalty in that game.
That was about to come on to that. That was such a penalty. There's an angle that came out. It was 2 days after the game. This angle's come out.
Yeah.
Why did they not have access this angle in the game?
If that was Arsenal, if that was City,
the penalty.
If that was Man United at home, that's a penalty all day.
But Maddison tweeted it. The referees are scared to make these decisions. Tottenham, we've had big problems with referees this year. Big problems. You cannot say that we haven't. And then on the subject of referees and penalties and VAR, before we talk about the Chelsea game, the same thing happened again. We should have had another penalty. An angle comes out a few minutes after the game that the ball was in play when Cucurella was manhandling Van de Ven. It was stupid. He was not interested in the ball, Cucurella. He only wanted to foul the player, and I think he was trying to waste time. He was trying to foul him before the ball came in play, but it was in play. Have you seen that picture, Dad?
Yeah, it was like a rugby challenge.
It's just, what is he doing? He's all like over it.
Scrum.
Yeah, just a shocking decision from VAR. That should have been given as a penalty as well. But yeah, Leeds, it wasn't the best. I want to say that they're a team who didn't make many mistakes. They did not look like they were going to make many mistakes at all. Against West Ham, I've seen the highlights. They made many mistakes. They were on the beach. They didn't care. That game against us, they confirmed safety, and they were thinking, okay, let's give it another high. And then they did even better. The next week, they won at Ellen Road, and then after that, they were on the beach. But after that comes the Chelsea game. Dad, we spoke about the penalties. Don't need to speak about that. What were your thoughts on the performance? I didn't think it was great up until Madders came on. He really changed us in that game. But it's a bit too little too late. When you're 2-0 down with 20 minutes to go, it's very, very difficult to come back.
At the end of the day, similar to the Leeds game we just said, and even the Wolves game away from home, the commitment, the endeavour was there. But in that game, the quality really did show up. I mean, Chelsea, I think, had been on a run of, losing 7 on the trot or whatever it was. They were in really bad form. Fernandes and Palmer decided to turn up for that game. And that's ultimately why they beat us. It was nothing to do with like desire or passion or commitment. They just had a cut of three or four better players than us in the right positions. The penalty didn't help. I understand that, right? The quality in our attack didn't help. The commitment of the team was great, but we didn't create many chances. And, going forward with the players we got, we were limited. But, an even bigger decision for me in that game, and this would have made no difference to the game at all in the last 3 or 4 minutes, whenever it was when Delap basically broke Spencer's jaw.
That's your red card.
Elbowing him. And
he did actually break Spencer's jaw.
How is that not a sending off? I don't care how they slow that down and make it look like it's a tap. And, I watched that live, and I think you were next to me, Charlie. And I said, that's a sending off all day. He's got to walk for that.
Completely. And then, Dad, it all came down to the final game of the season. We've spoke about this whole season, and it all comes down to what happened on Sunday, the most recent Sunday. All we needed was a point, because the week prior, I think we got spoke about, is Newcastle and William Asula done us a huge favour beating West Ham.
That's right.
And, well, now, all we needed was a point. We could have got that point against Chelsea. We didn't. We lost. Going on to the Everton game, all we needed was a point. Polinia to the rescue again. Obviously, even if we didn't score that game, you could say it would have ended 0-0, but I'm not sure it would have. It would have been much more nervy. And yeah, it was very, very tough game. Very tough game. But I think Everton were on the beach. But yeah, look, we did what we had to do. We got the win, and Tottenham Hotspur stayed in the Premier League. Another win. We haven't spoken about many positives. This was a huge positive. My friends were saying to me, "Congratulations, Charlie! You finished 17th for 2 years in a row." Do you know what I said? Yeah, and we've been celebrating at the end of the last 2 seasons. Has your team done that? He's a Liverpool fan. He said no, they were not celebrating this Sunday. They were annoyed. They had quite a poor season, and most of the fans want Arnie Slot out. No Tottenham fan wants De Zerbi out because they love him, because we've actually got a proper great manager. I think we should give a minute of appreciation to Roberto De Zerbi since what he's done since he's come in. He's been an absolute hero, an absolute legend. I love him. He's the best. He's great. Just incredible manager. And yeah, that's my minute of appreciation for him. Honestly, De Zerbi, thank you. If you're watching this, Roberto, you're the best, and your chant will come soon. There was actually a chant in the Everton game. Oh, Roberto De Zerbi. Oh, Roberto De Zerbi. Legend. I love him. Absolute legend. Roberto, thank you for keeping us in the Premier League. But Dad, Palhinha to the rescue. Those last minutes were nervy, even if Everton scored, it would have meant nothing. But yeah, we've done it. You saw his celebration at the end. I like to call it the helicopter. The way he ran on with his arms. Brilliant. And yeah, we stayed up. We stayed in the Premier League. Dad, how did you feel after that game? It was a good performance. Nervy. Second half was quite dull. Nothing really happened. But all of us were like, come on, ref, blow that whistle. Obviously, there was that delay that actually benefited us because we knew what the West Ham score was when they were done. They just won 3-0. But regardless, doesn't matter. We won. Dad, how did you feel that day? What were your thoughts on the performance? João Palhinha, we done it, Dad. We stayed in the Premier League. A day of celebration that was. Obviously, seeing the Arsenal fans at the end was not great, but we're not going to talk about that.
Well, it was, Palhinha again, ole.
Palhinha again, ole.
Like I say, the performance was very similar to most of the games, under De Zerbi, committed, relentless. The quality going forward, not great, but they stuck at it. You mentioned earlier as well, Gallagher is just a running machine. I mean, he did not stop until he was substituted. He was absolutely awesome. Porro had a fantastic game. Palhinha and Bentancur had a great shift. The defence was solid. Kinski, who I don't think we've come on to under the De Zerbi reign. As I said earlier, for me, Palhinha is our player of the season. Whether he's played, 20 games or 30 games, it doesn't matter. The games he played in, he made an impact. But my second best player of the season would be Kinski.
I wouldn't say Kinski's second player of the season. I'd say he's most improved player. He only played 10 games.
Yeah, but the like I say,
one of those games he got
believe
subbed.
If Vicario, I don't want to slag players off now, but if Vicario was in goal in these last 7 games, I don't think we would have had the amount of points, that we got. But like I say, so the Everton game, to answer your question, it's relief. It's just pure relief. It was a boiling hot day. It was committed football. Tottenham were never going to make it easy for the fans, like going 2 or 3-0 up. It doesn't work that way, watching Tottenham. So when that final, I think, did Kinski make a save with about a minute or 2 to go, Charlie?
He did, and that was when we realised we're staying up, boys. We're staying up.
That's when I started to breathe and think, it's got to be impossible for them now to score 2 goals. I mean, that would be the biggest, like, Spursy sort of moment ever if we now conceded 2 goals in the space of 2 minutes and went down. So it was the atmosphere, like I say, in them last 3 or 4 games, from the Forest game up until the Everton game, was unbelievable and made worth for me and you and Nunu going to the games and being part of that atmosphere. And long may it continue. I hope they're like that every game next season.
Dad,
it really does help bring the best out of the players, Charlie.
it was a tough season for you, especially. You actually only went to one Premier League home win this season. That was the Everton game, because you missed the Burnley game and you missed the Brentford game.
Correct.
Dad, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Before we go, a few quick fire questions. Rate the season out of 10.
Oh, this is like a 3 or
I'll
4,
give it
maybe.
a 1.
Four from bottom.
I'll give it a 2, actually. I'm going to give it a 2. And I'm going to say the 2. The way I was getting a 2 is 1 for us staying up. 1 that we've actually got a really, really great manager now in Roberto
That's the best
De
thing about
Zerbi.
this season, yeah.
Dad, how do you think we're going to get on next season?
Well, like I say, you can sort of hear the club coming out with a lot of statements in the last couple of days, whether it's Vinay, whether it's Carrington, and now the Lewis family. They're all saying the club's going to change, the mentality is going to change. We're going to try and, invest in the first team, build a better squad to be able to compete. Only time will tell.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff before this, even, when this season started, was down to Levy and how he ran the club, and not buying the best player possible to improve the team and going for potential a lot in the last couple of years. This lot are saying now, the budgets are going to change, the wage bill is going to go up, wage structure. But like I say, until we sign some players, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, whether we're being lied to or whether we can trust them. Like I say, they don't seem to be going anywhere. They have got in De Zerbi, which is the best decision the club has made, probably since bringing in Pochettino, over 10 years ago. Now I just hope they back De Zerbi the way they should have backed Pochettino. If he wants a player, you go and get him. Similar to, say, the model that Aston Villa have got with Emre. He runs the club. The director of football, De Zerbi isn't working for the director of football, and these scouts and these, analysts, they're working for him. And he tells them what to do and what to go and get. Yeah. And that is the way for this club to go forward. Listen to him. He understands football. He knows football. These other guys don't understand it to his level. Leave the spreadsheets to the accountants. If he asks for a player, you get the player he wants. Simple as that.
Yeah, obviously we've just announced signing Randy Robertson. You can go check out my short to see how I feel about that transfer. Before I wrap it up, I think something we haven't talked about enough is the injury crisis this season. I just want to put a quick comment on this, Dad. Don't worry, I won't ask you about this one. But I don't like to, talk about stuff like this. I like to talk about the performance on the pitch, which was not acceptable this season. But injuries did hurt us. We lost a lot of key players. Kulusevski didn't play a minute this season. Maddison, I don't think he even played 90 minutes in the times he came on. It was rough, man. It was rough. Obviously, Kudus was out for a large period of time. Porro was out. I think pretty much every player was injured at some point. But yeah, it hurt us, but we shouldn't dwell on it. We should focus on the performance on the pitch, like we have to say, Dad. Thank you so much. Make sure you hit the like button and smash that subscribe button, Dad. How much does it mean?
Come on, you Spurs. It means everything.
Got to subscribe if you want these daily Tottenham updates. This is the first episode of Charlie Talks Tottenham. There's many more to come, Dad. I'm sure you'll be on loads of them. So please, if you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button and smash that subscribe button. Hopefully I'll expand this Charlie Talks Tottenham to a few more platforms, but today it's just for you guys on YouTube. I've noticed that we've always had a consistent viewer throughout the whole of the podcast, so that's really great. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. Dad, disappointing season. On to the next we go. I'm confident next season will be better. Roberto De Zerbi, and hopefully by the time we do this next season, Tottenham will be Premier League champions, eh? Can't see that happening, but realistically, I hope we can just qualify for Europe. Even if it's like an 8th place finish, I'll be very happy. De Zerbi's done a great job so far, and I'm sure he can continue that. Dad, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Bye. Come on, you Spurs.